We go back to stock. Oh, what's the solution? Build more houses. But that's not as simple as build more houses, is it?
30 years and completely not succeeded. Or I was thinking, actually, on the way down to see you, all of those city centre flats that were built, and like, well, in Nottingham, we've got a ton of them, they're still not enough. That's what's quite scary, is the scale. And I worry that MPs and governments are focusing on the PRS, even the likes of Shelter, focusing on the PRS, because actually the big housing crisis is nothing to do necessarily with the private sector, but that MPs, the likes of Shelter, etc., don't think they can solve. And I've been thinking, we've always said, oh, there's a housing crisis, but nobody ever says what it is. So I've just decided and looked at the numbers and thought, right, we're short 1 million to 1.5 million homes in the social sector. Let's be clear, that means government, local authorities, mayors, planners literally, I owe you a social home to over 1 million and up to 1.5 million households, depending on who you believe. If we built them the social homes that they needed, took out the 1 million people in the private rented sector that are on benefits and, of course, have their what they can pay for rent capped because of the local housing allowance, well, suddenly you freed up 1 million homes in the private sector, which means tenants won't have to worry and first-time buyers can get back onto the market. So for me, we're focusing all the housing crisis on fixing the private sector, and what nobody's doing, which I want a weekly assessment of every MP, what is your affordable housing shortage, and what are you doing to get rid of it? Because if we don't have somebody focused on that, actually we'll never get out the housing crisis, because the aim is to fix house building through the private sector and get them to fund social housing effectively, and the aim is to fix the PRS, which have now resulted in the biggest stock shortage we've ever had in 20 years. All they've done is hurt tenants.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And now what are they going to do? So for me, when we're focusing on the rent reform, what we're not doing is focusing on the real problem, which is these horrendous affordable housing waiting lists. And I worry that MPs think they can't solve it, so they're playing around with the private sector and blaming the private sector so that nobody talks about it. And that's my biggest fear, is that all of these reforms won't work until we solve that problem.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it has to be a collaborative approach. I mean, the Secretary of State has written to certain councils and put them on the naughty step, saying, why haven't you built enough?
The idea of a council being on a naughty step.
Yeah, but what I haven't seen, is that, it's the working together to come up with solutions on how to actually how to deal with that.
Absolutely. I mean, one part of my background is I built the self-building renovation centre in Swindon. Everybody loves grant designs. We have all these PRS guys now, and I think Hampton's came out with a stat that 450,000 of them could be in trouble financially because of the rise in mortgage rates. What if we got them to, and the money that the private sector has, to build 1 or 2 houses a year? We've got 2 million landlords. What if we could incentivise 50,000 landlords or property investors to build 2 homes to hand over to the council for the next 25 years? And the council could work with them at a local level to find that land for them, or hand them over to, say, I don't know, as a property developer, we're giving you these private investors, they're going to build and pay for the social homes. That's 100,000 homes a year. So even if it was 50,000 homes a year, that's a big way of smashing that 300,000 target. Yeah. And that's, I think, again, the biggest thing that they've missed here, is if they'd worked with the private sector, which is already housing 1 million people on benefits and already has taken strain from the lack of social homes that government, local authorities and planners, mayors have failed to provide people that they owe them, that could have worked. We could be sitting here in a completely different situation now. And that's where I get really sort of sad, cross on my high horse. Because if you don't identify what a problem is, the real problem, you're not going to fix it. And that's why we're in the state we're in for the last 30 years. And this rent reform bill is not doing a thing to solve the real problem.